Hey noble ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking, and today we're checking out a channel that you have specifically asked me to watch and react to. And since the topic is feudal Japan, I'm wearing, of course, yeah. Of course I am. Yeah. Because that's normal, it's what people do. You watch something about feudal Japan, you wear feudal Japanese armor. It's normal, right? Right? Alright, so the channel in question is called Chat History, and already... So it's a very cartoonish type of channel with animations, I suppose, but what's really interesting is the fact that with only 56 videos, he has already got almost 500,000 subscribers, and his views are impressive, and all of this was achieved. He must be doing something right. So the video in question is the one called Why You Wouldn't Survive Feudal Japan. The views are also quite spectacular, so I'm actually quite curious to see what's going on here. So yeah, let's jump right into professional YouTubers. That's why it took me 1,000 videos to. Let's jump right in. Gracious, why do I make my life so difficult? Does that work? Somewhere in Japan, obviously. That's
Alright, I'm starting to think you enjoy getting kidnapped. This time, you're flung into feudal Japan, a rather violent era in Japanese history spanning across several hundreds of years. But this year is 1467.
Okay, Sengoku Jidai.
The start of the hostile and chaotic Sengoku period. You've really got your work cut out for you with this one. Time to put your survival skills to use, if you have any. So, do you think you're up for the task? Let's find out.
Let's find out.
Welcome to Sengoku Jidai, also known as the Warring Clans period, a dangerous time in medieval Japan's already chaotic history. See?
Yeah, some people don't like the expression medieval Japan, but I personally don't have a problem with it. And there is a fraction of even Japanese academia that uses it. It's actually a little bit of a contested topic, believe it or not. Yeah, nomenclature. I'm good with it.
See what I mean? The Sengoku period was actually a subsection of the overarching Muromachi period, but that's not too important. All you need to know is that the government is falling apart. Basically, there's this guy, the shogun. He's the ruler of Japan because he's a big, strong military man. But wait, I hear you say, I thought Japan had an emperor. And
yeah, exactly. Cool. Yeah, I like his style.
you're right, there is an emperor, and he technically rules Japan, but in reality, he's just a political figurehead that sits in the hotel cuck chair the whole time while the shogun does all the hard work to satisfy the country's freaky desires.
Yeah, that was after what is called the bakufu, the government of the tent, I think that's how you could translate it, where there was a massive power shift from the west in traditional Kyoto, which was of course the imperial capital with the imperial family and had been ruling Japan up to that point, all the way to Edo, which would be the ancient name of Tokyo, where instead the shogun, so the military leader, which became the de facto ruler. Absolutely, yeah.
So what the heck is causing all the ruckus? Well, the current shogun is in a bit of a pickle. All he wants to do is quit his job and retire so he can write poetry, paint, and strategically plant a few trees.
Oh, just like me. I do want to retire just to paint miniatures.
Problem is, he has no son to take the reins, but he does have a war-hating monk brother. Beggars can't be choosers. Problem solved. Uh-oh, looks like the shogun's wife Amazon primed a baby overnight. How embarrassing. Since there was a strict policy of no takesy-backsies, the shogun's brother remains the rightful heir. Wait just one gosh darn fucking second, says Mrs. Shogun. I shot this baby out of my coot chute, so he's gonna be the heir. And thus, a power struggle began. I just want to paint.
I just want to paint. Yeah, me and the shogun. We're pals. Or should I say NTSC?
All of this instability within the shogunate caused the country to be split in two. Team Brother and Team Baby. Powerful clans waged war against each other in an attempt to get their side into power. This political shit show inevitably led to an...
Oh my god, this political shit show. Oh, it's a beautiful way to describe the Sengoku period. I mean, he's not wrong. Not exactly academic, I imagine, but this political shit show. So gonna steal that.
Uncivil civil war, the Onin War. So the government's in complete shambles and anarchists rejoice. But then they have to realize that they actually have to live in an anarchy. So there's your background. Did you get all that? Glad to
Boom.
hear. Anyway, here you are, just outside of Kyoto, the capital city of Japan at the time, and it's just blazing with culture.
Yeah, I think that's the Himeji castle, mate. I don't think that's the Kyoto castle. Yeah, I think that's Himeji. The only reason why I'm recognizing it's because I've been there, of course, multiple times. I used to live not too far from Himeji, and that Himeji is where I would go to practice karate twice a week. Even though I wasn't living there, that's where I would practice Kyokushinkai karate. So yeah, I've seen that many times.
And it's just blazing with culture. And fire. Looks like the warring clans are getting a little carried away at the moment. That being the case, you're forced to roam the countryside in search of a place to anchor your roots and figure out a way back home. But
You know what's interesting? Oh no, look who's arriving there. Very appropriate for Japan. You know what's interesting, just as a little fun fact, when it comes to fire and medieval or feudal Japanese castles, particularly of this period, is that they were actually pretty resistant to fire. Of course, it's a fun video. I'm just adding, I'm not correcting him or anything. But I'm saying it's interesting because the fact that they would cover them with plaster, you know, how they look very white. Sometimes they use black plaster. It depends on which area of the country. I've been to both types of castles during my trips in Japan. And the thing is that the plaster, one of the things it does is not just for a decorative purpose, but it's specifically to make the wood fireproof and also so that it doesn't wither away because of rain and whatnot. So yeah, even though Japanese castles were mostly made of wood, exception being, of course, all the stone part of the walls, they would be very, very difficult to burn.
you quickly learn that danger is all around you. It was fairly common for thieves or bandits to cross your path and try to yoink all your valuables, and then stab you. Speaking of the devil, here's one now, so prepare yourself. Sate sate, betsu no seizon sha. Nani? Oraka na koto shinai de kudasai.
Oroka na koto o shinai de kudasai. Don't do anything stupid. Oroka na koto, I haven't heard that one in a while. Very cool. Japanese is always nostalgic to me.
Yosh.
そのはもしかして不可能 Got it.
Fukano, to say impossible, because kano is when something is possible, so fu is the negation. So he did a pretty good job with this. I don't know if he recorded it himself, but he did a pretty good job with the Japanese here. But in anime, you do hear it a lot. It's actually one of the main differences when I was living in Japan, is that when you do use sentences that you learn from anime instead of actually using sentences the Japanese use, they will point it out. I remember once I did that on purpose, because, for example, if you want to say, what are you doing? In Japanese, it would be, nani shiteiru? Or nani shiteimasu ka? Depending on how formal you want to be. Nani shiteru yo? And nani shiagaru is like very anime-like. So if you just imitate anime, it's kind of funny because you sound like an anime in Japan. But yeah, very nice. Is that really a sponsor? It is. Hey, I mean, that was smooth. I didn't even know if it was a sponsor, so he did a really good job with that one. Domo, arigato.
Well, that was a close shave. With the thief inexplicably but conveniently passed out due to being well-groomed, you quickly loot him to blend in with the rest of society. Speaking of which,
Society.
would you believe that feudal Japan did not operate as a hierarchy? Well, you shouldn't, because it did. So let's get out that ladder and descend through the ranks, shall we? At the tippity top was the emperor. He was the guy in charge, but not really. He had a cool shirt and that's about it. Then there's the shogun. He was actually in charge, with the power of commanding the military and controlling national policies and laws. And to be fair, he had a cooler shirt than the emperor. Directly reporting to the shogun were the daimyo, feudal lords and clan leaders that commanded various provinces around the country.
Yeah, the great names.
They're proud of their land, but they want more.
Isn't that like the he was wearing the Dragon Ball? Who's this? Oh, samurai.
Samurai were loyal warriors with neat swords that honorably served powerful nobles like the daimyo. They were the epitome of courage and honor, and their culture is thriving to this day. Ronin were samurai without their masters, but they could still be bachelors. Ashigaru were samurai interns and general cannon fodder. Basically, they were peasants who were given swords and told to stab other people while still earning a minimum wage.
While still earning a minimum wage. This guy's a genius. Yeah, okay, so, yeah, of course, this is very simplistic, very basic, superficial, but I think he does it on purpose. In fact, he even says it on his, where is it? Banner, there you go. History explained, just not well. No, I think you're doing a great job in making it entertaining. It's really, really fun. Of course, very, very simplistic distinction between samurai, ronin, and ashigaru. It'd be nice to make a dedicated video to literally discuss all of these, but in excruciating and pedantic details. If that's something you want me to do, let me know, and I'll do it.
Ah, peasants. The dirt poor majority of the population that did all the work to keep everyone alive. Nowadays, they're referred to as the middle class. Artisans were the ones who made your furniture, your clothes, and your tools. That's cool, but you can't eat a chair, can you? Can you?
And which piece would you like to start with first, sir?
Oh, just the leg. Merchants were...
You know, that's really very good point. Notice that peasants in Japanese sort of Confucian influenced society, so they are underneath what is like the military class, of course, in all of its different iterations, and clearly aristocrats and nobles. But when it comes to everyone else, note that peasants are on top of both artisans and merchants. And the reason, and it's correct, he's right. And the reason for this is that peasants produced something, but merchants didn't. They would sell what was produced by someone else. Now, artisans oftentimes also produced something, but as he said, it's not as vital or pivotal for the maintenance of society and in general feeding mouths, which has always been something very important from the perspective of the state. I think everywhere, but never more evident than in both China and Japan, where the kanji to represent the concept of population is literally person mouth. So these two characters here, which in Japanese would be pronounced jinko, and in Mandarin Chinese they would be read renko. So of course, kanji for Japanese and hanzi for Chinese. So yeah, that's a very good point. Actually, I think this is a great moment to ask you a question. Do you like this samurai helmet? And if the answer is yes, then I am going to sell it together with the rest of the samurai armor that creates this set, because it doesn't really fit me very well, the armor. No, I didn't gain weight, or maybe a little bit, but it's the pasta's fault. Now, in all seriousness, I decided to invest on other projects, but I do want to make it as cheap as I can because I don't want people to have to spend too much. I want to create a little bit of a nice deal, so I'll probably sell the whole set for about 900 bucks. So click the link in the description, but do keep in mind that it's missing the shin guard, so read the description properly before buying, and we only ship to the US. Few other things for sale on that account. I try to keep my prices as low as possible whenever I have to get rid of inventory to make space for new stuff. Thanks.
Scumbag salesmen that just profited off of everyone else's work and were deemed parasites because of it. Buy high, sell low. At the very bottom, to no surprise, were the outcasts. Criminals and beggars for the most part, but also those who had undesirable jobs like butchers, undertakers,
Correct.
actors, entertainers, and reaction channels. Now, you have to...
Reaction channel. Hey, I've been exploring a little bit of React too, but I try to add as much as possible, which is why a lot of my videos now are almost an hour long, precisely because, yeah, I would probably put XQC at the bottom of the list there, but I don't think there's anything wrong with a little React as long as you make it transformative in nature, and it's also a good way to give people a shout out, like in this case, because I think he definitely deserves it. This is a fun channel, but hey, his humor is top notch, and so far, I gotta say, might be superficial, but the information is correct. I haven't found anything wrong. I mean, that's a change for once.
To understand that this is a very simplified structure of how feudal Japan's class system was laid out. It was a much more complicated web of relationships and rankings that is, quite frankly, above my pay grade as an outcast entertainer. So that begs the question, where would you fit in society? In reality, unless you were Chinese, Japanese, or look at these, you wouldn't have. You'd either be a social outcast or straight up sold into slavery without question.
Yeah, I mean, there are situations like if you were a monk, like a Jesuit, maybe you could, depending on which area, because as he's explaining, the country is fragmented at this time, and there are a lot of warlords with their own clans that take specific territories, and then they battle each other. So some of these warlords, for example, were very favorable towards the West and Christianity, and then there were other warlords that were instead absolutely against it, and in general didn't like foreigners that much. And even when it comes to foreigners in general, it would really depends. Are you Portuguese? Are you Dutch? Are you English? It kind of depends, because then there might be political interests and what could you bring. So yeah, it very much would depend where you end up. So whatever that little well that we saw at first teleported you would really make it or break it when it comes to how well you would be accepted. But if you are Western, like me, so if you look European or you're like a white American, I suppose, they would recognize you as a Westerner because contact has already happened between the West and the East, of course. And whether you would be treated well or imprisoned would really depend on which territory of which clan you ended up in. Oh no.
Even if you didn't end up being someone's perpetually untipped servant, you'd still end up being a peasant in some form, whether it's harvesting up rice or hauling in the fish. It was backbreaking work. From dawn until dusk, you did what you had to do to keep yourself and the country fed. After a long, exhausting day, you would get home to your cold, drafty, and very flammable home. Despite being the literal provider of the food for the country, your crops are owned by the shogunate, so...
Isn't it interesting? This is very similar to during the feudal system in Europe, for example. You would be a peasant by contract, and then you would have to work the land that doesn't belong to you, and of course pay a lot of different types of taxes, which I've already covered in my dedicated video to medieval peasants, link in the description below, to your landlord. With that being said, the fact that he said, the joke, I actually really like the joke with the fact that homes were very flammable. You know why it's true? But you know why that wouldn't matter? Because as we were saying, castles weren't. So in fact, one of the things that a member of the feudal system, one of the advantages, there are a lot of disadvantages, but one of the advantages was protection. So say that an enemy clan or just some crazy people were invading your territory, your area, you could run back inside the castle, they would lock the gate and you would be protected. And if they tried to burn those, not gonna happen or not as easily.
You barely even have scraps to eat. Malnourishment was very common amongst the lower class, and while it often resulted in an early grave, you could also inspire a few musicians.
I wonder how he's sourcing that one, because I don't remember, like, of course there are situations with famine, specifically during times of war, and this is a time of war. But then again, malnutrition being that problematic all over the country, I'm not sure about that. Might have to double check him on that.
If the starvation didn't get you, the diseases certainly would. Smallpox, measles, and chickenpox were known as the 3 great diseases. 3 great opportunities to end up 6 feet under. It's like 2 feet for each disease. But you don't have to deal with any of that. Okay, well, maybe still the disease if you're unlucky, but thanks to your recent battle, you're equipped to pass yourself off as a lowly ashigaru, a foot soldier commanded by a samurai. Since they need as much help as they can get, they won't be asking any questions. If you can hold a sword and swing it at a bad guy, that's good enough. In an event completely convenient to the plot, a samurai wanders up and recruits you to be in his army. In Japanese, of course.
For honor. Okay, let's see. こんにちは。あなたは強い腕とクリーミーな太ももを持っています。What the heck? Oh my gosh, this means hello. You have a strong arm and a creamy thigh. Oh my gosh, this guy.
Thankfully, you are able to read his subtitles and accept the position. Congrats, you're now a full-fledged member of the Hosokawa clan, one of many clans spread across the country.
Very true, look at that. Look at that. This is the one I'm wearing now is a date set of armor, by the way, if you wanted to know that. These guys over here, this is a beautiful, very colorful map. I love it. Maybe I would add the kanji just to make it better looking, but it looks great. If he made it, I'll have to ask him permission to use it. Interestingly enough, you know how oftentimes we see the clan symbols on the chest plate, or sometimes, of course, on the banners? Well, the idea of putting your clan's symbol on your chest plate was mostly done to both ashigaru and low-level samurai. Usually, if you were a high-level samurai, you wouldn't do that. You would have other symbols, sometimes even your own.
While the Hosokawa and Yamana clans fought for the control of the capital, other clans fought to expand their own territories.
Yeah.
And there were a bunch of them, like the Shiba clan, the Oda clan, and of course, Zelda fanboys. So let's see what your new job entails.
Man, he's so right. Goodness gracious, I didn't notice that. How did I not see that? I've been around Japanese clan symbols for so long. I never know. That is absolutely the Triforce. Wow. Now I want to know if that's where they got inspiration for. Zelda. That is crazy. Well done spotting that.
See what your new job entails.
Soldier life, go.
You're now a soldier, which means you need to start learning some discipline. You wake up at the ass crack of dawn to start your day. Wake up! Eat a healthy breakfast of rice and veggies, and always practice good hygiene. Landscape. You spend the morning strengthening your military skills and are partnered up with Hoshi. He's a nice guy. He was a farmer, but decided that maiming and pillaging could prove more lucrative. Together, you train martial arts, archery, and swordplay all throughout.
That is very true. Like when we look at martial arts, even Japanese martial arts in the modern sense, oftentimes if you are into Japanese martial arts, you kind of pick one. Not always. There are people that are very enthusiastic and practice like 17 different styles and that's all they do every day, all day. But in general, I want to say like, hey, I want to practice karate. Of course, karate wasn't a thing back in the day, too modern. Same for judo. But imagine but then again, like someone could be, no, I want to do yaido. And someone else is like, no, I want to do aikido. And someone is like, no, I want to become proficient in using the bow, so I'll do kyudo. A samurai would be proficient in every single one of these. And the same we could say for the ashigaru class. And that is fascinating if you think about it. And the reason why is because, of course, that was their profession, even though for us is an extra activity. So if you're a student, after school, maybe a few times a week, you go practice your martial arts. And then if you're someone who has a job, maybe you're a banker, but, you also practice martial arts, maybe even teach martial arts. But for someone who was a professional, that was their entire life, which is one, why they would be so proficient at it. And two, it makes it really fascinating. So if you really wanted to train like a feudal Japanese samurai, you would have to practice something like 5-6 different martial arts and then study philosophy and do all other things. Isn't that fascinating?
Throughout the morning as a way to keep both your body and mind sharp as a tack. Whew, all that training made the time fly by. It's already noon, so after a quick lunch of rice and veggies, time to fortify the walls of the camp to make sure no bad guys get in.
Absolutely, yeah. Japanese food and the sort of staple cuisine of the period is something I tackled in details on a kind of an older video of mine, but I will put a link in the description so I don't necessarily repeat all of the information. But just so you know a couple of things, it's a debated topic within Japanese academia too.
Build it huge. Looks like your samurai has a task for you. You've been assigned to gather intelligence from the enemy. We are in the middle of the Onin War after all, and that gosh dang Yamada clan is burning Kyoto down faster than we are. Can't let that happen. No problem, Master Sam, you say in Japanese subtitles.
Yeah, knowing this guy. Let me see. 私のオーバークラフトはうなぎでいっぱいです。Yeah, sure. My overcraft is full with eel. This is like becoming a mini game for me.
You wait until nightfall to carry out the mission. After a hearty dinner of rice and veggies, you infiltrate the enemy camp without causing too much suspicion.
You're like a shinobi.
You quickly swipe the intelligence and giddily make haste back to base. With the intelligence in hand, your samurai congratulates you on a job well done. In Japanese, of course. You slowly open the letter and scan the text. Oh no. It can't be. This is...
Hi, we've been trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty.
Shit! You stole the clan leader's mail by accident. Wait, there's a note. You're not the best at reading Japanese text, but you think you can make out what the message means. Looks like your next mission starts at dawn. Oh yeah.
Yeah, so the idea that, imagine in this case, so this guy is an ashigaru, it would have been a similar situation if he was a half samurai or if he was a full-on samurai. You could be tasked with a specific job, which could be gather enemy intelligence, it could be become a spy, which technically makes you a ninja. Although then again, ninja is not a term that is period, a bit of a later term, but shinobi or shinobi no mono could be both considered period terms. And the two things are not mutually exclusive. And oftentimes we have this idea because of the 80s and 90s and 70s even, and the idea of, oh, ninjas are the bad guys and samurai the good guys, unless the ninjas become the good guys, although sometimes that entails literal tails, like they're going to become turtles. But the reality of fact is that historically the lines were a lot more blurry than we would imagine, and you could absolutely be a samurai by social class, but a ninja by job. That's why the two things are not mutually exclusive, because they are two different things. So you could be samurai, what's your job? Reconnaissance. And you are samurai, but your job is you're a gunner. And you, samurai, but your job is shinobi.
It's wartime.
Warfare, let's go. Ah, beautiful.
You better get dressed, champ. You've got a country to die for. Unlucky for you, early Ashigaru were not well equipped for battle. Remember that they were dirt-poor farmers. They couldn't afford ornate weapons, so they had to make do with what they had.
Rather than make do with what they had, they were issued stuff. The state, of course, knew. The clans knew that Ashigaru didn't have the money, oftentimes, unless you're like a war veteran. This is to pay for their own equipment, so the equipment would be state issued. I shouldn't say state, clan issued. But then again, of course, the quality of that equipment would vary tremendously. Sometimes you will get an iron cuirass and a helmet, like kind of similar to what you see here. It's called a jingasa. Literally an iron hat. Kind of the military version of the kasa, which is this one here. It literally functions as an umbrella for the rain for the farmer. So it's raining, you wear this, and it functions as an umbrella, but you have still both arms ready to do your job. But other times you could even get paper armor, like literally many, many layers of paper instead of iron, because it was cheaper and it still kind of did the job. It's pretty good against penetration. The problem is that it wastes away faster.
Which was farming equipment. Ever just want to shove a shovel into someone's throat just to see what would happen? And now you can. Kills them. One weapon of choice was the kama, a simple sickle-like weapon suited for slicing and stabbing some sneaky suckers. If you get the DLC, you can slap a chain on that bad boy. Granted,
I love the DLC, although then again, the kusarigama was not used in warfare. It's kind of half a myth. It existed, but not in warfare.
a lethal radius of several feet and allowing you to open that pit up. Ashigaru that were well trained or well funded had access to better weapons and armor. Perhaps the most effective weapon that they could wield was the yari, a long spear that could be outfitted with all kinds of blades. Want to stab? Go for the omiyari. Want to slash? Try the katakama yari. If you want to support the boys from afar, get yourself a yumi, an asymmetrical longbow which was deadly on the battlefield with an effective range of over 400 feet.
I imagine he's gonna get to the guns, so the matchlock type arquebuses that became common, of course, in this era due to the Western intervention, then copying the blueprints, retro engineering, and all that. But what's interesting is that bows never went out of fashion, even during the period of gunpowder. So even when you had units of gunners, still with arquebuses, still you would have a certain number of archer units per every unit of gunners to provide support. And I don't remember the exact numbers. I read it and it may change depending on what war it is anyways, but I think it is reasonable to think, don't quote me on this, but it's reasonable to assume that you had either a 4-to-1 ratio for archer units for every single unit of gunners, or even 5-to-1, depending on the clan.
Archers were a core support group in any army. They would riddle the battlefield using a reliable method of spray and pray. It's just a shame that friendly fire was always on. If you wanted to spice things up, you could opt for fire or even explosive arrows. As for armor, it varied. The best Ashigaru were absolutely strapped with thick leather chest pieces, helmets, sleeves, and greaves.
I object to the leather. It's iron. It's the most common, single-handedly. Sometimes you do have leather. Oftentimes, when you have a leather breastplate, it's because the leather is put on top of the iron. The majority of cases, it's metal armor, paper armor. Leather, it exists, but it's rarer.
They were usually fitted with metal plates for added protection.
Very good.
Low-ranking Ashigaru were fitted with a cheaper, easier-to-produce armor called jack shit. Whatever.
Those are jack shit. His scripts are great. Man, you're great. So yeah, this is called Mino, by the way, and it's to protect from the rain.
Clothing they had was their best bet. But it should be noted that the spoils of war were generous. Ashigaru were allowed to pillage and loot whoever they attacked. Slay an enemy with better weapons and armor? Looks like you found an upgrade. Now that you're all equipped, it's time to storm the battlefield with your best friend Samurai. What a cool guy.
Oh no.
No. They got Sam. That's it. You charge into battle to avenge your fallen mentor. You spot an enemy, but it's a familiar face. Hoshi? You switched sides? Yeah, much better loot, says Hoshi, in Japanese of course. Just then, you notice fire spreading to a nearby building. Well, that's gonna suck, eh? Ugh, you again? Kyoku naku, hito no ke o sorenai de kudasai.
Man, this was awesome. This was great. Very, very fun. I'm going to watch the rest of his videos. You know what's really funny about all of this? That if you look at his channel, I had a very, very, very brief look at the thumbnails before filming this. And yeah, ancient Egyptians look pretty good. Hannibal seems to be represented correctly for his Second Punic War. You know what? I'm starting to think that this cartoon channel is more historically accurate, believe it or not. Simple, but more historically accurate than some of the channels I've had to debunk in the last few years. So well done, mate. Good job. And once again, for all of you noble ones, thank you so much for watching. And let me take this silly thing off, and I will see you tomorrow for my next daily upload. Thank you very much for watching, and remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. Sayonara.